Hello everyone and welcome to Movie Nation, where we talk about the movies like it's a national pastime. I'm your host, Ken Reels, and today on the show, we've got a very, very jam-packed show today. We got a possible return of a member of the Suicide Squad in the news. We've got Dumbo, we've got the Mustang, we've got a whole bevy of other interesting news. Plus, we have our Movie Nation trailer of the week, as always. Welcome, guys, to the show. Today, we are doing some pretty interesting things. We're also counting down our top 10 Disney animated films. I'm super excited about this, mostly because I've got some things on my list that you wouldn't necessarily expect to see on a top 10 Disney list in terms of animated films, mind you. We are not doing any of the live action stuff. That could be a whole nother list in and of itself. But there is one kind of sort of exception, but not really. When we get to it, we'll get to it. But welcome to the show, guys. And this week, I'm super excited. I got to see a movie that I've been waiting to go see for weeks now. It originally started coming out in theaters. It was playing in New York City and major cities for the last 2-3 weeks, and now it is finally out in a much wider release, quote unquote wider release. It's still pretty limited in terms of where it's playing, but I got to see the Mustang. I am super excited about this. For those of you who don't know what this movie is, it is the tale of a gentleman who is incarcerated in a prison, and he starts to he joins up with this program where convicts take wild stallions and domesticate them and then sell them, and help funds this program. And it's a way of rehabilitating people. And oh my gosh, this was a great film. I'm super happy that I was able to go see it in a theater, mostly because I'm a very theater experience guy. If you are someone who doesn't really care about theater experience, this is not necessarily something you should go out and see in a theater, but I think it's a very worthwhile movie to even rent when it comes out on VOD, because it is just captivating. From start to finish, you kind of know genuinely how this movie is beat for beat, but what transpires and kind of the character journey and the acting is absolutely phenomenal. Our lead actor, whose name escapes me at the very moment, is absolutely great. And then you have Bruce Dern in this as a very kind of mentorish role. He's the one that runs this program in this prison. And you get the idea that this guy is a very violent human being, but he starts to kind of go, I need to kind of straighten myself out. I've got a daughter who we see frequently come in and out of the movie, and she is she's pregnant. And the first time we see her, she asks her father to sign this, and they're going to sell their grandmother, who has passed away's house, his childhood home, to help fund her getting to her and her boyfriend and father of the child he's going to start up a mechanic joint, just a garage, and this is going to help fund their move down to Florida And it's just these moments with the daughter are great, where you start to see him kind of go, I'm your father, and I'm gonna start trying to act like your father. And there's a great moment where she kind of blows up on him and goes like, you were never here for me. You, not only did you kill my mother, which is a huge moment in this film where you kind of just start to go, oh shit. And not only did you do that, and I had to, he didn't necessarily kill her mother, but it was just like what he did to her mother, and all the things she had to deal with as being so young and just kind of growing up with trying to help the mother, and then him being in prison. And it's such a great emotional stakes moment, and you feel the character exuding out of this film, and I just absolutely love it. Like, every lasting minute of it, I'm absolutely captivated. And I wasn't bored. I was never bored in this film, and I was just like going, damn, this is so good. I'm so engaged in what's going on in this movie. And I think if you sit watching this on like Netflix or VOD, I think you're going to start to lose kind of interest, because it is a very slow-paced film. It's not necessarily something you would see on a normal basis. And I apologize for my camera freezing there on the stream. I'm in the process of looking into that. But back to the movie, I absolutely adore this film in every stretch of the imagination. This is definitely, while I wouldn't say it's up there with like Captive State or Arctic in terms of some of my favorite films that have already come out this year, but March was just a solid month of just like 3 really good films that I am passionate about and really excited to put in my top 10 when it comes down to it. Like, this Arctic and Captive State are definitely going to be in my top 10. And if they aren't, they are clearly going to be honorable mentions. Mustang, I think Captive State and Arctic are going to have a very hard time not being in my top 10. And I think the Mustang will probably be with them. If not, I'm going to have a very good fucking reason to not put them in my top 10. But yeah, I just really, really dig this movie. This was one of my favorites this year, by far. One of my favorites in March, for sure. And that leads us into Dumbo. And Dumbo, I did not like. This movie. If you follow me on Instagram or Twitter, @KenReels on both, I really did not like this film. I was bored out of my mind. This was so bland and it just felt so bad. And the thing is, like, I love a lot of the acting in this movie. I don't fault them for this film. I think the script is horrendously boring. It just bored me to tears. It was not a fun film to watch in any conceivable imagination. It was just bad. It was a bad film. I did not want in any way, shape, or form to sit through this film and go, oh, that was interesting enough. It's so milquetoast. It is such a milquetoast film that it kind of aggravates me. I hated this. I hated sitting through this film, and I'm not someone who is very passionate about the original animated film. In fact, I haven't really sat through that. I think I sat through the animated film once. I own a VHS copy. I owned a VHS copy of it, and I maybe have seen it once. I've always said, like, the Pink Elephant's marching sequence is amazing. In this film, the Pink Elephant's marching sequence is okay. And that is the only shred of Tim Burton that you can really feel in this. Like, and then there, of course, is the Michael Keaton role, where you kind of get the idea that Michael Keaton is playing Johnny Depp playing this character. No joke. Like, it feels like this was a role that originally got pitched to Johnny Depp, but then they gave it to Michael Keaton because of the whole kerfuffle with that. And kind of just like the studio not kind of being into having Johnny do stuff with that, especially after the whole kerfuffle with Amber Heard and all that stuff. And also the general thought that this isn't the greatest in the world. But overall, like, I wanted to go into this movie kind of going like, I hope it's like Cinderella-esque, where I'm not necessarily passionate about it, but I thought it was a fine film. No, Dumbo was just boring. It bored the shit out of me. And the fact of the matter is, most of this film is kind of Transformers-esque, where it's like, our main character isn't the title of, it's not the Transformers, or in this case, Dumbo. Our main character isn't Dumbo, it's the humans around Dumbo. And I kind of get that. I get that from a script writing standpoint. It's really hard to kind of get you connected with a character that, one, in this case, doesn't talk. So it's difficult. It would be difficult, 100%, to build a hour and a half, almost 2-hour film with simply just a elephant and talking animals and stuff like that. But we're doing it with The Lion King, so who the fuck knows? And I'm not looking forward to The Lion King at all. Because why? I didn't like Jungle Book. I thought Jungle Book was a very well acted but visually inconsistent film. I've probably stated this. I don't think I've stated it on this podcast, actually, why I think Jungle Book is a piece of dog crap. But I think it's the inconsistency in the CGI animation, where the heads and the animals change size depending if Mowgli is on screen. If Mowgli is on screen, they are much larger than they are when Mowgli is not on screen. There's no consistency with the animals in the environment. Zero consistency. They are different sizes constantly throughout the film, and it bothers the crap out of me. And it's just a minor thing. It's a minor thing that really just bugs me. And that's why I think that film fails. Dumbo is less of that. Dumbo fails on a script level. I think Jungle Book is a much better written film. I just don't think it's visually it doesn't visually look right to me. Dumbo looks completely visually amazing. Like, you could tell it's Tim Burton. He's a visual director. So him doing Dumbo, I went, okay, at least it'll visually be pretty, if anything else. And yeah, that's pretty much it. It's visually pretty. I think I'm in the minority on this film, especially given the fact that my audience was really digging it. They were really happy at the end of the film when the credits started rolling, but it did nothing for me. This movie did absolutely nothing for me. As I put on Instagram, I just like thumb down on that, like just bad. I'm not saying that no one will enjoy this, but I think I personally did not enjoy it. I'm not going to discourage you from going to see it. I'm just going to say, like, if you're willing to kind of go, all right, I just want a decent visual spectacle kind of film. And the funny thing is, I saw this in IMAX too, and I don't think it really benefits from seeing IMAX in any way, shape, or form. It's just like, yeah, no, that's fine. It's fine. And I don't think when you're trying to remake Disney animated classics into live action, I don't think fine is worth going to see. I want to see a reason to expand a reason to continue doing this stuff, and I think this is a piece of shit. Like, it is not good. And that leads us into our first news story, actually, because talking about pieces of shit, well, not really, because this actor was actually really good in it. Jai Courtney says Captain Boomerang will return for the Suicide Squad, which is friggin' amazing. I will say the one thing about Suicide Squad that I did enjoy was Jai Courtney as friggin' Captain Boomerang. He was actually funny. He was genuinely funny. I really enjoyed him as Captain Boomerang, so mostly because it's like he's the comic relief, and Captain Boomerang's just like Captain Boomerang in the comics of Suicide Squad is very prominent, so him coming back for the James Gunn redo, as it were, I think it's very, very obvious. And of course there's reports that James Gunn is planning on doing a lot of new guys into the Suicide Squad, but to bring back obviously bringing back Deadshot and Harley Quinn is more than likely going to show up at the very least. I think Deadshot is probably going to be leading the team, and I think Captain Boomerang would be a cool extra addition, and frankly, Jai Courtney, it's the one role that I've genuinely said Jai Courtney is good. And apparently, THR is reporting that they've heard conflicting reports of whether or not Joel Kinnaman will return as Rick Flag. Captain Boomerang is basically going to return, and I'm cool with that. Will Smith is getting replaced as Deadshot, obviously, with Idris Elba. So who knows? This is really, really cool. And let me just quote Jai Courtney here. We're getting ready to shoot in a few months' time, and there's not much else I can reveal about it. But yeah, you'll be seeing Boomerang back for sure. I'm happy it's going to be fun. It will be different for sure, but it's going to be great. And that was talking to Business Insider. Obviously they were interviewing him for something, and it came up in questioning. But I think Jai Courtney being back in Suicide Squad, that sounds like a good idea. Like, just period. That just sounds like a very, very good idea. And that leads us into our next story, which is that Mark Maron talks about working on the Joker film with Joaquin Phoenix, which I believe is expected to come out later this year, and that is being directed by Hangover director Todd Phillips, and I'm interested. Really, the main interest is the fact that it not only is it Todd Phillips directing, who's largely known for comedies. I think it's added that it's really interesting. And Marin, quote unquote, was saying the approach that Todd Phillips has taken is more of an origin story and a character study of a mentally ill person that becomes the Joker. Marin added, it's more of an intimate and gritty movie with a very specific scope. It's going to be really interesting to see how it comes out. So, it's not going to be really a typical comic book movie, but probably something closer to something like Logan, a drama that happens to feature a character from superhero comics. Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking was going to happen with Joker, where it was kind of a different take on it. I'm interested to see what happens. We have a few images of it. We have Joaquin as the non-Joker Joker, and we also have him in the makeup, which is very classic clowny kind of look. But like, again, if you're going to do the Joker, you're gonna have to do something different. While I will say that Jared Leto's Joker was interesting and a different take on the Joker, I wouldn't necessarily say it was a good take on the Joker. Joaquin Phoenix is one of those actors that is very, very interesting. And originally he didn't want to, he's been attached to superhero projects and said no to them. So I don't know what he's going to do, basically taking this new take on it. I'm pretty interested to see what he could do. And apparently Mark Maron is also very interested. Maron is also playing a character in the film, and he's really, I'm interested. I'm very, very interested to see what could come of this film, and we'll see what happens in October when Joker comes out. And that leads us into our last little ditty of news, and that is the fact that another big name, Angelina Jolie, is in talks to star in Marvel's The Eternals. Oh boy, we've got another character coming to the another great actor coming to the MCU. I wouldn't necessarily say it's a great I think Angelina Jolie is hit and miss a lot of the time. This is the last like action movie I remember seeing her in was Salt. And she's gone and done some pretty good action films, so I'm not necessarily tearing her being in the Eternals. And given that the Eternals is a Jack Kirby kind of comic, and Jack Kirby, for those of you who don't know, is very much, his work is very much akin to Thor, the stuff we saw in Thor Ragnarok, a little more psychedelic, as well as Steve Ditko is also another very psychedelic kind of artist, but Jack Kirby is much more of a more pop art kind of style to it. And the Eternals is very, very interesting. I have no idea about the Eternals at all. And that's going to be a lot going forward with the MCU. Like a lot of stuff post Endgame is going to be very, very interesting to see. I'm not necessarily deteriorating from the MCU. I think fine, go ahead. And if the Eternals is great and Angelina Jolie is great in it, all the better. So yeah, there's not much to do. This is a quote from Kevin Feige about the movie The Eternals and kind of what they're going for. Everything after Endgame and after Spider-Man Far From Home will be different and unique as we try to make every film. But seeing returning characters is certainly something we're going to do and want to do, but also introducing characters that the majority of the world has never heard of, much like Guardians. Much like Avengers before we made Avengers. And there are lots of them. Eternals are one group, but we like the idea of introducing an ensemble, doing an ensemble movie from the start as opposed to building up as we did with the first Avengers. More like Guardians, not tonally, but in terms of introducing a new group of people. You were asking about 60s and 70s before. Jack Kirby did an amazing epic with Eternals that spans tens of thousands of years, and that's also something we haven't really done, which is why that, among many other things post Endgame, we find appealing. And the idea that things are gonna span a lot of stuff over the years, and also Jolie has kind of stepped behind the camera a lot lately. I don't think I've seen her in much in recent, but we also have she also has two things with Disney currently in production right now, and that is the Maleficent, Mistress of Evil, which is being released in the fall, and fuck that movie. I do not like the first Maleficent. I think it's a piece of dog shit. And why the fuck you kind of you're kind of humanizing a character whose sole purpose and why she is the best Disney villain is the fact that we don't know her we don't know what her deal is. And I think what they made her deal was just bad. Really, really bad. Did not like it in any way, shape, or form. It was horrid. And then she also has a live action animation hybrid, the one and only Ivan. Interesting. I don't know about that. I might hear more about it when D23 happens later this year. Who knows? That'll be interesting. But yeah, Angelina Jolie joining the MCU. Sure. Fine. All the more the merrier, really, in terms of who could be coming into the MCU. And that leads us into our Movie Nation trailer of the week. And this week we're talking Annabelle Comes Home, which is the newest and third Annabelle film. Oh boy, this trailer, I didn't think the first Annabelle was great. I thought it was okay, but the second one was absolutely phenomenal. And this is being helmed by the writer of all three films, as well as the writer of It, and the writer behind The Nun, which I think that a lot of people gave The Nun a lot of flack for being a uninteresting film. and very hokey and stupid and dumb. But I kind of love that. And this film, I'm sorry, I friggin' think dolls, especially that kind of doll, like Annabelle is creepy as hell. Oh, so creepy, and I do not like it. And this film, this trailer just gives me so many just yeah, kind of vibes. It is just skin crawling, and that the moment where she's just like, "What did you touch in there?" Everything. Oh joy. And of course we are, from the looks of it, we're getting a lot more of Vera Farmiga and Patrick Wilson as the Warrens in this. So I'm interested. Again, I like I like the Conjuring series. I think they're decent films. And of course we have like the just like F that. Just no. Just her looking under the bed and seeing the doll, like no. F that shite. That's so creepy. And of course you have the little jump scare at the end. Not necessarily a good jump scare, just a jump scare that is mediocre at best. But yeah, so that brings us to our main topic, which is me counting down my top 10 Disney animated films. Now, to preface this listing, the main reason why I'm prefacing things is that Disney animated films, specifically anything that was done by Disney Animation Studios. This is the official Disney Animation Studios list. So if something is not necessarily on there, or you want to argue that something shouldn't be on there, there's really only one on this list where I can say, yeah, people could argue that this isn't necessarily part of the animated films. But there's an actual specific historical reason why they are they are part of the animated film canon. And I'm gonna go ahead and jump right into my number 10 is a film that was very much something I watched as a kid. I watched a lot more with my younger brother, who this is probably one of his favorites, and that, ladies and gentlemen, is The Rescuers Down Under. I really did. I even dig this movie. It was my younger brother's personal favorite out of the Disney canon. I think we played that tape more than any other. We didn't wear out any tapes when we were young. We weren't that kind of kid. We wouldn't like rewind and fast forward through stuff over and over again. We would just simply sit down and watch the whole thing from start to finish. We would maybe fast forward through the beginning bits with all the previews and stuff, and then get to the feature film. But overall, like, we would never wear out a tape. People talk about like wearing out tapes and stuff. Like, we were never that kind of family. I'm still never that kind of person. Like, when it comes to like controllers and stuff, people like break controllers. I'm just like, what the heck's wrong with you? Like, I've never broken a controller from just wear and tear. I've never worn out a videotape from wear and tear. I think it was mostly because we were just. It's just a kind of collector mindset. Like, my mother is a big music CD collector. She has a massive CD library. It took me months to digitize all those CDs because it was a pain in the neck. because there was a lot. There was a good 100 albums to friggin' sift through, and kind of digitize them all, and it was a fun situation, especially given that some of those CDs are so old that they never had any ID3 tags built into the CD, or even iTunes couldn't recognize what the heck they were. So I'd have to go in and put in all the ID3 tags, and that was a whole summer of me doing that with the music. But back to Rescuers Down Under, I still think this film is very, very prolifically good in every stretch of the imagination. And there's nothing more to say than this is definitely much better than the first one. The first one I think I've only seen like once. And I own the VHS copy of it, and I thought it was good. I thought the first one was a little boring as a kid. I think looking back at it, as an adult, I think I'd have a lot more appreciation for it. In terms of the Disney canon, there's a lot of Disney films when I was younger that I didn't really enjoy. A lot of the classics, I think I respect a lot more as an adult. Especially like Snow White. I think I only saw Snow White as a kid once, but nowadays I've kind of more put it in a respect kind of form, not necessarily something I will sit down and rewatch over and over again. Again, like some of these films, like on this list, I would rewatch over and over again. And that leads us into our next one, which is honestly the one where I can say I love this film specifically because of a certain reasoning, and that is Fun and Fancy Free. Now, I know what you're thinking, like, okay, this is kind of a amalgamation kind of film where there's multiple different animated sequences, and it mixes in these live action segments to kind of bridge the gap between these multiple cartoons. Specifically, this is the one with Mickey and the Beanstalk, which is the last like half hour of the film is Mickey and the Beanstalk. I haven't watched this movie in a very long time, but it always sticks into my memory, specifically because I would always see like the preview for this film on a couple of the VHS copies that VHS Disney films that I owned, and I was always very, very interested in it. And I believe it was when Disney released their masterpiece. No, was it right, because I would see it on the Disney Classics, and then when they started the Masterpiece Collection stuff, this was on the list of the Masterpiece Collection VHS copies, and I was very adamant in wanting this, and I believe I got it for my birthday one year. And I really love this film. I think this is a very cool film. I even like some of the live action segments. I very much remember the second live action segment, which is the segment with the ventriloquist, whose name escapes me right now. And that very much kind of pointed out my childhood, and it also kind of brought in, and that's a segment that brings us into the Mickey and the Beanstalk segment, which Mickey and the Beanstalk is really the big segment of this film. I mean, it's half the film, like 3/4 of the film is the Mickey and the Beanstalk, which is like a half hour ish. It's like a 20-something minute cartoon. And Mickey and the Beanstalk is so good. It's such a good film. It's such a good like semi short length film in and of itself, and Mickey and the Beanstalk is really the main reason. And then you have Bongo the bear, and that segment is also a really, really interesting animated segment. I think as an adult I could get more out of the Bongo segment. As a kid, I was more into Mickey and the Beanstalk than anything else, but I do remember Bongo and kind of go, that was a pretty good short. I kind of dug that, but I never said dug that as a kid, but you kind of get the idea that I enjoyed that as a kid, the Bongo segment. But I think Mickey and the Beanstalk is really the key element that would always entice me to actually watch this movie and own it. And this was also in the era of Disney where they had very limited budget to do the animation. As a result, they had to do a lot. And this is also the last film that came out before World War II, I believe. Before World War II broke out and we went into World War II, Disney specifically stopped the feature-length animated films to help work with the war effort and do a lot of propaganda, which is where you get some of the very interesting Disney shorts, like the Donald Duck being a Nazi, where he's just like Heil Hitler, Heil Hitler, and it's a very cool cartoon and a very funny cartoon, despite it being very, very interesting to watch. And I believe there is a DVD of all the Disney propaganda stuff with a introduction by damn it, I forget the critic's name, and film historian, very big animation film historian, whose name is escaping me, son of a bitch. And there's a great introduction from him, and that kind of gives you some of the background in animation. If you want to watch some really good animation, historical animation in terms of propaganda, that if you can track that DVD down, that's something that you really should check out. I don't know how expensive it is, but definitely something you should check out in terms of historical context. And if you're really World War II buff, that's really something cool. But let's get back into the top 10, and the next one on the list is The Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh. I was a huge mark for Winnie the Pooh. I still am. Winnie the Pooh is a huge part of my childhood. And it was this film, and even the VHS copies of the individual shorts. I believe we had all three of the ones that were in this movie. It was Blustery Day, Tigger 2, and what was the third one? Honey Tree. And then there's a fourth segment that is only available in this version of the film. And that was the A Day for Eeyore short. And A Day for Eeyore is really, really cool. I really think the Day for Eeyore segment is really good. And that's where we get introduced to Pooh Sticks. And I think that when that happened in the live action film with Ewan McGregor, I kind of heartstrings there, kind of pulling on them there. and my nostalgia for Winnie the Pooh. But yeah, The Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh was definitely one of those films that I thoroughly enjoyed from start to finish. It was a really good film, and I really loved it. And I still have a heart for Winnie the Pooh. And yeah, this is exactly the reason why. And the next one on my list is number 6. And that is, or not number 6, this is number 7. I can't count. And that is The Hunchback of Notre Dame. I really enjoy this. I have a very up-to-date DVD copy of it. I want to buy a Blu-ray copy of it down pretty soon, because I really love this film. And this is actually a film that the DVD / Blu-ray has a very good commentary with the directors, and I believe that they are the same directors behind Zootopia, if I remember correctly. They're not the ones behind Zootopia. They're the ones behind another film on this list that I really dig. And Hunchback of Notre Dame, what can you say? This is such a breathtaking film visually. And this is one of those films where you kind of like go, this is kind of where the Disney Renaissance ended. A lot of people argue that the Disney Renaissance kind of ended with Tarzan. I argue this is the last kind of breath of air with it was this and kind of Pocahontas that kind of teetered near the end of the Disney Renaissance era, that I think is kind of where it started to falter. Even though I think The Hunchback of Notre Dame is amazing, I love this film in every stretch of the imagination. It is such a good film. I really loved it. And yeah, no, Hunchback is great. It has the best villain song in any Disney movie, period. I know that song by heart. I can sing that song by heart. I'm not going to sing it to you guys, but that's one of those things where if I were to do karaoke, if I were to do like Disney karaoke, like that is the song I would sing, like 100%, because I love that song. And I'm not necessarily, I can go baritone if I want to, but I think even doing it not in a baritone voice is actually still a good version of it. But whew, I really dig this and the music, and everything about this film is always a part of me one of the best. A lot of people argue like, oh, the gargoyles kind of ruined a lot of it. And yeah, the gargoyles are really not great. But they were a thing. Even the directors admit the gargoyles aren't the greatest part of this film. This is a film, if you can find the Blu-ray or the DVD of this, watch it with the director's commentary, because the director's commentary is phenomenal. It's like in my upper echelon of favorite director commentaries on any film ever. It's definitely up there with like the Kung Fu Panda films in terms of just the sheer scope of learning how filmmaking is done, especially in terms of animated. And you get a lot of like scripting stuff when it comes to animated films and how the scripting process was. It's great. Like this is again one of my favorites, bar none. And that leads us into our number 6, and that is Lilo and Stitch. Lilo and Stitch was a film I knew about way before Lilo and Stitch was even really announced, as it were, because I believe Lilo and Stitch was announced in Christmas the year before, for a summer release date. And I actually took a trip to Disney World when I was 10. Yeah, it was Disney World. Disney World is Orlando. Disney World in Orlando, I went down there when I was 10, and they were in the finishing stage. They were in production. This film was in production during that time. So when I went on the Animation Studios tour down in Orlando, I got to see some stills, and I got to get one of the artists who I don't know, they probably rotate those artists out every now and again, but there was an artist when it came to the animation tour, and he actually drew Stitch. Like, he drew a picture of Stitch during the animation tour, and that kind of sticks with me. And then when I got to see the film, I believe I saw it in theaters, if I remember correctly. I'm pretty sure I saw it in theaters. I absolutely loved it. My parents loved it too. And it was just a very different a kind of film for Disney. And I think it's kind of a standout in the era of Disney that was kind of like, it wasn't Disney Renaissance. It wasn't the resurgence, as it were. And when it came out, it was kind of like, yeah, no, it's a Disney film, and it was good. It spawned a whole franchise, and for good reason, because it was really, really, it was just a passionate kind of filmmaking. And I believe it was directed by the guys behind Hunchback of Notre Dame, if I remember correctly. I do remember that maybe one of them was like a writer on it. Like, there was some connection to Hunchback, and there was a connection to like Little Mermaid and stuff like that. And there was a great. This film is great. It's emotionally resonant. It's one of my favorites. It's one of my favorites, bar none. It just barely didn't crack the top 5 for me. And that leads us into our next one, which is Tangled. Tangled makes my top 5 Disney films. And this is solely because Tangled, to me, is the ushering in of a new era of Disney. Not only that, it is probably one of the best written scripts out of all this current era of Disney, bar none. Because if you break down, and I decided to break down this script for a script writing class, when I broke it down, I kind of was like, wait, no, this script is absolutely amazing, because it is structured as you have two actual main characters of this film, and they both drive the plot. They're both driving the plot at the same time, which is very, very difficult to do. If you know script writing, it is incredibly hard to have two characters drive the plot. You either have one character driving the plot with another character being very prominent in the film, but no, both these characters are driving the plot 100%. And that is what makes this film phenomenal in my eyes. It is absolutely one of my favorites, and totally deserves a top 5 spot. Like, easily top 5. When I was making my list, when I was like structuring this list, I was just like, yeah, no, Tangled's in top 5. Easy. And that leads us into our next one, which is Treasure Planet. I love this film. I adore this film. This is one of my favorites. It's actually the first film where I kind of fell in love with James Newton Howard. This was the film I was introduced to James Newton Howard as a composer, and I like pirates. I actually own a massive encyclopedia of pirates. Where the fuck is it on my it's I know it's somewhere on my bookshelf over here, but I have a massive 1,000-page encyclopedia of pirates. I love pirates. And I love the original Treasure Island that this is based on. It is one of my favorite books as a kid. I like adventure stories. And also Muppet Treasure Island is kind of actually how I got introduced to the story of Treasure Island. And just to say, Treasure Planet is amazing. There's a great video on YouTube, which I will actually link in the description of this episode. And if you're watching live, I'll probably I'll probably find it in the chat and put it in the chat at the end of the episode. But it is really, really good. I love this film, and there's a great video kind of explaining the whole production side of this movie, and it is bar none one of my favorite videos. It's like an hour-long video, and it's a great look into what Disney was doing at the time and how they basically tanked this movie on purpose. Because they just didn't believe in it. And this was the Katzenberg era of Disney. And yeah, Katzenberg was kind of a dick. It was one of those eras of Disney where people just couldn't see the true potential of some of these films. And I think Treasure Planet is definitely one of those cult classic Disney films. And people remember this film, looking back at it, much more than they do the current, much more than they did at the time. And Treasure Planet is just one of my favorites. I love the core of this film is Treasure Island and that relationship between Jim and John Silver, and it's perfect. It's a perfect film in my eyes. It's, well, not necessarily perfect, but I think it's a very, very good film. I remember playing the Game Boy Advance game, and 100%ing that game was such an interesting task. I remember playing that over and over again and going out of my way to try and beat that. And that was honestly one of the first video games I solely wanted to finish and complete. And it holds a special place in my heart, not only as a gamer, but as a watcher of film. Treasure Planet is such a good film. You should, if you haven't re-evaluated that film, it's definitely one that you really should reevaluate, because people go, oh, Hercules or stuff like that are underappreciated. No, Treasure Planet is one of the most underappreciated Disney films of all time, bar none. And that lets us into our number 3, my top 3, and that is my number 3 is The Lion King. Of course it's The Lion King. I've already said on this show my relationship with The Lion King. As a little kid, my parents would literally put on The Lion King when the VHS came out in like 94, 90. No, 94 is when it came out. So like we're talking like 95, 96. They would put the VHS tape in, and I would just be mesmerized. I would just hit and watch the whole thing from start to finish, which helped my mom in terms of the fact that she could just do whatever, and she would know I would just be sitting there enjoying the film. I believe it was 95 because in 90 my brother was born in 96, so it was probably like 1994 or 1995, sorry. 1995 when I saw this for the first time. I mean, come on, I was like 4 years old, but I would just sit and be mesmerized watching this. And still so many years later, 20 plus years later, I'm still in awe of how beautiful this film is. I remember seeing it in IMAX during a re-release at one point in the... Oh, no, I saw it in the 3D re-release that they did a couple of years ago. And that film... This Lion King is a film that very much benefits from 3D, specifically stereoscopic 3D, because of how it was produced. It was a very layered production in terms of how the shots were composed, in terms of how the cells were composed, because it was a very layered production and how the cells were made. And it just pops. Like, this film pops from start to finish, and the 3D really is a huge benefit. I mean, I own the like collector's set which has the 3D version on it as well as the Blu-ray. And yeah, no, this is a great film. And I'm not looking forward to the live action, let's be honest. I think I think the cast is great, but it's going to have a lot to win me over. It's going to take a lot to very much win me over with the live action. And that leads us into our number 2 on my list, and that is Aladdin. I said when we had the Aladdin trailer as our trailer of the week, it's kind of winning me over. Aladdin is definitely one of my favorite Disney films for good reasons. It's my number 2. And I think it's mostly because I can just about sing every single song in Aladdin by heart. And I don't know whether I saw Aladdin or Lion King more as a kid, but Aladdin and Lion King were kind of neck and neck in terms of how much I watched it. But looking back at it, I think I like Aladdin a little, just slightly more than Lion King. Just slightly. Not a huge... it's not a huge gap between the two. Like, they could flip-flop either way, depending on the day. But for now, Aladdin is a little... just slightly edging out Lion King. But yeah, Aladdin is great. You have Robin Williams as the genie. Robin Williams is phenomenal. He's just a performer that I absolutely adore. And that was probably the first celebrity death that hit me really, really hard. Like, he was a part of my childhood. Like holy shit. When he died, it hit me hard. And I recently listened to the audiobook of his official biography, and that was even harder to sit through and listen to. I was kind of in tears at the end of the biography When I was listening at work and hearing the end of that biography was just, it brought me back to the moment where I heard he had passed away, and I was just like, crap. Like, man, that was heavy. That was really heavy. And I hope the live action has some level of whimsy and respect. And I love this film. This is my magnum opus live action. This is my magnum opus Disney film. It's my favorite out of the Renaissance era, but it is not my number one. And my number one Disney animated film is The Great Mouse Detective. This is also where I was introduced to Vincent Price as a kid. I had no idea who Vincent Price was, but looking back at it, this was kind of my fascination with Vincent Price. He's probably one of my favorite actors of all time, like bar none. And this is where I fell in love with him, because he was unapologetically enjoying doing the voiceover work for Ratigan. And Ratigan is one of those villains where you just like, Ratigan is probably top 5 material for Disney villains, in my opinion. Mostly because I love detective stories. I love good mysteries. Also, this film scared the living crap out of me as a kid. I'm not joking. As a little kid, I remember seeing the opening sequence of this film on like Disney Channel or something, and it just freaked me the hell out. And I had no idea what movie it was from until years later. I believe it was on like I believe I got this VHS for my I think I was like, it was my 10th or 11th birthday where I got this. And I love this film. This is a great film. And the sequence, this was one of the first Disney films with CGI mixed in with the traditional, and it was great. Like, I really dug the sequence because it didn't feel out of place. And very similar to Hunchback of Notre Dame, it never felt out of place. And there's a lot of scary sequences in this film. And I love it. I love it. I love this film from start to finish. It was so good, and I look forward to revisiting it again and again over the years, because I could watch this film over and over. It's so good. It's a taut mystery, and it's a great representation of Sherlock Holmes in a very Disney sort of way. And Great Mouse Detective, my connection to Sherlock Holmes comes from this film. I had no idea what Sherlock Holmes was as a kid, but like, this is what introduced me to Sherlock Holmes. And I think looking back, it's been just captivating. Like, this could not, like, my top 5 for this list was pretty easy to fucking put together, but like, Great Mouse Detective was always going to be number 1. It was always going to be my number 1 film, and it's just one of my favorites. It really is one of my favorites, without a doubt. And I really dug it. Like, I really dig this film. And what more can I say? Great Mouse Detective is my number one Disney animated film of all time. And with that, guys, we're going to end it off for today. Thank you guys for watching and or listening. You can follow me at Ken Reels, Twitter, Instagram, all at Ken Reels. You can follow the podcast at Movie Nation Pod on Twitter. Movie-nation.com is where you can find the audio version of the show, as well as links to the articles for today, and of course our Movie Nation trailer of the week. Thank you guys for watching, and we will see you guys next time. Bye. Thank you for listening to Movie Nation.
Where shall I go? What shall I do?
Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn.
You can like us on Facebook. Go to facebook.com/Movie Nation Podcast, or follow us on Twitter at Movie Nation Pod.
Nobody likes you. Everybody hates you.
If that's so, and you would like to get in contact with us or leave feedback for the show, you can do so at the respective socials or send us an email, movienation@hotmail.com. That's movienation@hotmail.com. Or you can do so on our episode post over at movie-nation.com. That's movie-nation.com.
And tell our enemies that they may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom!
And you have the freedom to listen to us next time.
Is looking at you, kid.